I'll see you guys in the dark.
I'm a 19-year-old female who is studying in a university in England. Entering my second year last month, we decided to stay in my university town the day before I was due to move in my student home so I could get there early and move my stuff in and give me the rest of the day to relax before we started Freshers Week. Well, the night before moving day, me and my mother stayed in a hotel located in my university town. We were greeted by a very friendly man called Jeremy. Jeremy was very attentive and showed us to our room and stayed around 10 minutes telling us the history of the hotel, and he repeatedly asked us if we needed help unpacking and stuff, which we kindly rejected. It was a Friday, so me and my mother went around town and had a few drinks. Nothing too heavy, as Freshers Week started the next day, so I wanted to be fresh for the Saturday night. Before going out, Jeremy explained that he never works weekends, so he told us to have a good night and wish me luck with the rest of my university journey. He gave me a hug and gave my mother a hug and a slight kiss while moving his hands down towards her butt, which she found weird but brushed it off as nothing. My mom is 37 and pretty cool. She looks young for her age, and Jeremy is easily in his 40s, so we just thought he fancied his chances with her. Well, moving on, me and my mom have a great night around town and watch a couple of live bands. We have some wine, and we're a little bit tipsy. We get back to the hotel and the bar is still open, so we decide to have a nightcap. While we were having a drink in the bar, Jeremy emerges from a back room and spots us and makes a couple of jokes. He then proceeds to watch a video on his phone on full volume of a woman screaming at the top of her lungs as if she was being murdered. The screaming was blood-curdling and made me and my mom unsettled, and also another couple in the bar looked a little concerned as well. The video went on for 3 to 4 minutes before Jeremy laughed and went to the back. When we finally make our way to bed, my mom takes her shoes off after they become painful after dancing in the bars earlier. Jeremy emerges from the back room and puts his arm around my mom and says, "Hey, let me help you to your room. You must be wasted after all that drinking." My mom isn't actually that drunk and insists she is fine, but Jeremy persists and basically follows us to the room and proceeds to come in. But I tell him goodnight and close the door pretty much in his face before locking it. The next morning, we are up early and make our way down for breakfast. The young girl working takes our breakfast order, only for Jeremy to bring them out insisting the eggs cooked to perfection, although he claimed he never worked weekends. Me and my mom are weirded out by Jeremy at this stage and check out straight after breakfast. He sees us out and says these exact words, "I'll be seeing you out soon, Christy." Christy's my mother's name. Anyway, at the time it didn't strike us as too unusual, and my mom drives us to my new home and helps me unpack my stuff. She then leaves in the early afternoon as she had work that evening at a local bar. The rest of the day goes by without much going on. But that night, I'm out drinking with my housemates and I get a call from my mom saying that Jeremy had just come into the bar where she works. This is no coincidence, trust me, because when we were having our nightcap, he had heard us talking about the bar where she works, and he also had our address which needed to be provided at the hotel for whatever reason. He had also said to my mom, when she was pouring his pint, that she could go around to his friend's house after her shift, which was just around the corner. This call really scared the shit out of me. So about a half an hour later, my mom calls me back and says that Jeremy has left the bar and she rejected his offer to go to his friend's house later, but he'd said he'd be quote-unquote back for her later. This was really worrying, and I told her to make sure that a customer was with her when she was locking up on her own that evening. After this call, I felt sick and I didn't join my friends in going to the nightclubs. In the meantime, I called my dad, who no longer speaks to my mom. They aren't on bad terms, they just chose not to keep in contact with each other after they split a few years ago. My dad is a club bouncer, but he wasn't on duty that night. But I called him and begged him just to drive down there to make sure everything was okay. My dad clearly knew by my shaky voice that I was panicked, scared, and helpless. Well, 1 a.m. rolls around and I didn't get a response from either my mom or my dad's phone. I was worried sick and hoped that Jeremy hadn't been waiting around the corner and done something to my mom when she was locking up. At 1:30, my mom finally rang me in hysterics. As she'd been locking up, Jeremy had pulled up in the car with 3 other men and shouted to her to get in for a ride. My mom declined his advances, and he got out of the car and approached her and told her that he won't tell her again. He said she had been flirting and teasing him ever since she checked in last night. She told him that's complete bullshit and she wasn't into him at all. As he got closer to her, she could smell heavy liquor. As Jeremy goes to grab my mom, my dad pulls up and honks his horn. This causes Jeremy to go back to the car and climb back in and tell my mom that he knows where she lives and he'll be waiting. The car screeches off. My dad then gets out of his car and tells her that I told him to check on her. Scared to go home alone, she asked my dad to drop her off at my grandmother's, and she didn't want to be alone. After that night, we never saw Jeremy again, but my mom did make a report to police about him and gave them a full account of what had happened, but she hasn't heard back from them. I'm just pretty relieved that my dad turned up when he did. Jeremy would have easily been able to get my mom into that car as she was very small in stature, just about 5'2" and 120 pounds. I just hope that scumbag got what was coming to him and is behind bars. My mom has been pretty badly affected by this and is only now comfortable being alone in her house. So Jeremy, I hope you rot in hell and let's never, ever meet again. I've been saving this story for a special occasion, and today I received some awesome news that would definitely apply. The man that stalked me for over 2 years has just been denied parole, and I couldn't be happier. What follows is a very condensed version of the hell he put me through during those years. My marriage had recently fallen apart after 4 years, and I moved to a new town to make a fresh start. I quickly found a job tending a bar at one of the many dive bars around town. The customer pool covered a wide array of folks. Everything from college students to bikers filled the roster of regulars. Well, within my first month, I'd made friends with a very nice couple. They ran an area horse rescue service from their ranch. I had mentioned a desire to learn how to ride a horse, and the wife had offered her services. We got along well and sometimes spent girls' nights out hopping bar to bar, flirting with men. On one especially wild night, she introduced me to an ex-employee of hers. He and I spent that night together, and that was where it should have ended. I was able to easily move on with my life, but he would not. 3 times in the following weeks, I received roses from a secret admirer. What was at first a romantic gesture would soon turn horribly sour when I was contacted by this admirer. After being asked if I had gotten my roses and telling him yes, he informed me that he'd spent so much money on the flowers, and I was expected to repay him with sex. I was pretty shocked at the nerve of this guy. I had initially been a little wooed by the flowers. If he'd asked nicely, he may have gotten a date out of it. What happened during the course of the date could have went anywhere, but the fact that he expected sex because he'd spent money on me, like I was a whore, made me disgusted. I didn't hesitate to tell him so. His opinion was that I was a tease, and that I had been leading him on. However, considering I'd not seen or spoken to him in weeks, I still don't see how he got that idea. Once I told him to fuck off and hung up the phone, I never expected to hear from this guy again. I was wrong. A week or 2 later, I was out on a girls' night with my friend, and we ran into this guy. He was drunk as a skunk and must have thought I'd forgotten that he'd said that to me. I hadn't, of course, and I told him to his face. All this did was make him more aggressive, and after he grabbed my ass, I told one of the bouncers I knew, and they kicked him out. I could hear him cursing me the whole way out the door. I had luckily thought ahead and asked the same bouncer to walk us to my car when we left the bar a little while later. I had been suspicious that he may be waiting for us when we left, and I turned out to be right. As we approached my car, I saw him waiting behind it. My bouncer friend knocked him around some and then gave us enough time to get away. My friend told me later that night why her and her husband had to fire him. Apparently, he would show up to work drunk sometimes and come on to her and give her husband an attitude. Once he'd done this the 3rd time, they had had enough and cut him loose. Now all the trouble that I was having seemed to make more sense. Well, as we moved forward through the next year, I had several encounters with him around town. Just my damn luck. One particular rough incident was when he showed up at my house slobbering drunk and crying for me to take him back. I tried to explain to him that we never had anything to begin with. No one that I know would think of a one-night stand as a relationship, but he must have. The guy was desperate. I had to call the cops to get him to leave, but I had no idea it would get much worse. I'd been doing my best to avoid running into him, and I know for sure it had been almost 2 months since I'd seen or heard from this guy. My new boyfriend and I had about 6 months together, and we were hanging around my place watching TV. We'd been out to dinner earlier that night and had only been back about an hour when a loud banging started at the front door. It only took a few bangs before it flew open, taking the frame with it. We'd both been caught off guard when we were standing in the open like dummies when the culprit entered the house. It was my stalker and he was drunk, but he was also armed with a pistol. The moment he saw my boyfriend, he started shooting. My boyfriend knew it was coming and had begun running when he was hit by the first shot. I'm not sure what happened after that first shot because I started running too. By the time I made it to the bathroom and locked the door, I'd counted at least 3 more shots. Since I was almost positive that my boyfriend was dead, I was going to do my best to survive. Just by chance, I had my phone in my back pocket. I was dialing 911 even before I'd locked the door. While I was speaking to the operator, I could hear him yelling curses at me in a slurred voice. I figured he'd start shooting through the door any second, so I laid down in the bathtub, making myself as flat as possible. I can't remember exactly what she was saying to me when the shots began. I was so terrified by this point, I couldn't help but scream. The shooting seemed to go on forever before it stopped. It was probably around 30 seconds before I finally heard the policeman yelling at him to drop his gun. Honestly, I wish he hadn't, but he must have had a small shred of sense left. It wasn't much longer until an officer knocked on the door and told me to come out. The paramedics were already working on my boyfriend. Miraculously, he wasn't just still alive, but he was conscious and talking to him. It looked like the son of a bitch was so drunk he missed all the vital organs, only managing to hit my boyfriend twice in the leg. They had already arrested my stalker before I got out of the bathroom, and I didn't see him again until the trial. It wasn't a long procedure. Once I testified, his lawyer stopped the trial and announced he was going to take the plea deal he was being offered. He'd had several prior offenses, so the 10 to 20-year life sentence was getting off light. My boyfriend and I celebrated the good news by getting married, and we've been together for 12 years this May. Since his first parole hearing hasn't went so well, we shouldn't have to worry about him getting out for at least another 2 years or so. I think we've taken an extended vacation to celebrate this time. Wish us luck for the future. And to my crazy-ass ex-stalker that I had a one-night stand with, let's never meet again.
I work at a large crafting store in California and have been there for a year and 8 months now. A little background before I explain what's going on. So last year, we hired a guy. We'll name him Hayden. Hayden was a little quiet on the first day, but quickly became more talkative, and over the next couple of weeks, started to never stop talking. He would constantly say weird shit. For instance, one day he was put in charge of building furniture. Our store carries stuff like furniture and home decor as well. He was apparently having difficulty assembling the table he was working on, and said something about cutting his wrist if he can't figure out how to put it together. Another time we were both working in a stock room, and he kept talking about how much he looked like the Parkland shooter Nicholas Cruz. I'll admit he did in fact look like that kid, which was kind of creepy. I remember one day I had gotten off of work and was waiting for my ride to pick me up when out of nowhere Hayden walked up behind me. He just stood there with an awkward smile on his face, and I politely asked him, "What's up?" He said something to the effect of, "Oh, nothing, just enjoying my lunch break. I'm thinking about going inside Taco Bell, right across the parking lot from our work, and shanking someone." He pretty much laughed and said he was joking after that. When my wife picked me up, we saw him walking towards the Taco Bell, and just flashed us this creepy-ass ear-to-ear smile. So the last straw for me was when he and I were assigned to work our spring freight and get it loaded up on a large U-boat. Our shift started at 7 a.m. and was over at noon. It was 11, and we still hadn't finished our task because Hayden just wouldn't stop goofing around. He would also work very slowly on purpose, and would only take one item to the U-boat at once. Our boss came to where we were working and was upset that we weren't done yet. He told us we both get written up if the job wasn't finished before we were off. I was pissed off at this point, and Hayden knew it. He seemed to feel bad for pretty much getting me in trouble, and apologized. He then said something that really concerned me. He said in the most serious tone I had never heard him speak in since meeting him, "If I get fired, I'll shoot this place up." He went on to say that he knew where all the emergency exits are, and would first shoot all the cashiers, then move on to the other employees in the store. I'll admit, I didn't immediately report what he said, but it did have me on edge, and I kept thinking about what if. After some convincing from my wife, I finally did the right thing and informed my manager. They took a written report from me and contacted the police. After 2 more days of working with Hayden, he was fired and subsequently arrested for his threats. The week after he got arrested, my boss held a meeting with the entire staff and told everyone what happened. After everyone left the meeting, he pulled me aside and revealed to me what the police and Hayden talked about during the interrogation. I don't completely remember what he said, but Hayden apparently admitted that he said what he said and kept asking if I had been the one who reported him. Fast forward to a few weeks ago. I was working at the same store. I still am. And I was heading to the break room for a final break when I heard a voice from one of the aisles to the left. A man was standing next to the paint case and asked if I could get him some paint. While I was opening the case, he addressed me by name, which I immediately thought was weird because I wasn't wearing my name tag on this particular day. Out of curiosity, I asked him how he knew my name, and he said it was just a lucky guess, to which I thought was BS, mainly because his tone of voice seemed very sarcastic. The entire time I was getting his paint, he was staring at me with a smirk on his face. He then began to ask me questions about my name, which is the same name of a popular TV show character. He asked what year I was born, why my parents decided to give me that name, etc. At this point, I started to walk away, and as I had other things to do, the whole time I was walking away, he was still trying to talk to me. I heard him yelling my name from 3 aisles down. I went and stood in the warehouse until I thought he was gone. Later that same day, one of my coworkers asked me if I knew the guy who was buying the paint, and I told her that I didn't. She told me that he had approached her and asked her all kinds of questions about me, like if I'm a good worker, and if she likes me as a coworker. This is an ongoing issue too, as he's come into the store 2 other times, one being yesterday during my day off, and apparently asked where I was. I don't know for sure, but I suspect that this guy might be cousins with Hayden, as they sort of look alike and have similar mannerisms. Both look similar to the Parkerland shooter, and have the same creepy vibe. This might not be the scariest thing on here, but it's still pretty freaky. Tonight, I worked the closing shift, and was outside getting carts after the store closed at 8 p.m. when 2 SUVs pulled onto the parking lot. One of them parked behind the store, and the other one parked in the main parking lot. I was standing in front of the entrance doors when a man dressed in all black and wearing a hood stepped out of one of the SUVs. Another guy walked up next to him, and they both started approaching the store. I politely told them that we were closed, and then I looked down to notice a large baseball bat in a hoodie guy's hand. I started repeatedly ringing the bell to be let back inside, and these 2 guys were just pacing back and forth in the lot, staring right at me. My manager let me in and called the police. The guys were long gone when they got there. This could have easily been a totally unrelated incident, but I thought I'd still update because the whole thing makes me think it could be you-know-who.
For some background, I'm a 15-year-old freshman in high school. I moved to my current town in the middle of 6th grade. When I first moved, I met Jay, and we became friends pretty quickly, and it was obvious he had a crush on me. I wasn't interested in dating until high school, so I turned him down when he asked me out in 7th and 8th grade. After rejecting him the first time, he changed. Jay started acting creepy, perverted, and I just got a terrifying feeling in my gut when around him. At my 8th grade formal, he followed me around taking pictures of me. It was pretty creepy, but we started talking again after an incident at school occurred, and I questioned him, which doesn't relate to the story at all. Jay was always very creepy when we talked. He would call me beautiful, sexy, etc., which I told him made me feel very uncomfortable. He asked me out, and I told him no. He started calling me baby and telling me he loved me and wouldn't stop even when I told him to. This is about the time that he starts popping up in the stairwells I needed to use to get to class. and taking long drinks from the water fountain right outside the classroom door I was in. He seemed to just constantly be in the places I frequented. Jay would stare at me in class and give me this unsettling grin whenever I made eye contact with him. Jay gave me the chills, and I was not excited when he told me that he was going to homecoming. I went with a bunch of my friends, and as soon as we walked in, I saw Jay standing around looking for me. I had told Sophie, my best friend, about him, and she noticed him too. Our school is divided into 2 lunchrooms, the large and small commons, which are connected by 2 hallways. One of them had the girls' bathroom and a hallway everyone put their heels in, and the other was a dark hallway that the principal's office door was in. We went down the dark hallway, and he saw me. Jay pushed back a bunch of people to get right behind me and whispered in my ear, "Holy fuck, you look so dang sexy." He just mumbled something and hurried off. We hit the dance floor, forming a large circle of just our friends. I noticed that he kept walking around our group, looking at me as he walked by. We weren't dirty dancing, just having a fun time. I taught my drum major how to do a wobble, and we were really getting into spirits of things. Sophie and I eventually got thirsty and went to take a pee break and get some water after a few other girls. But on our way back, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned back, and Jay was standing there. The following conversation ensued. Jay says, "I need to talk to you." "Okay, what's up?" "I have to ask you something." I'm standing there questioning. Jay asks, "Can you leave us alone?" to Sophie. I need to speak with her all. Noah, who is a mutual friend. "Hey, y'all, what's up?" Noah put Jay in a chokehold, and Sophie and I ran out of there. We laughed it off nervously before heading back into our circle. Apple-bottom jeans came on, and we were getting funky fresh when I saw Jay come up behind me. I jumped into the circle and got low, 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 playing it off as Sophie closed the gap, keeping him out. He just paced around our circle, staring at me, just watching. I have really bad anxiety, and I was getting stressed out at this. I was trying not to cry as I felt like prey being circled. Sophie turns over her shoulder when he walks past her. Sophie asks him, "Do you need something?" Jay replies with, "I need to ask OP something." "I don't think you do, Jay. Let me talk to her, please." "She doesn't want to talk to you, Jay." Jay then storms off, pushing a few people out of his way. Sophie takes me to the bathroom to calm down, and eventually we decide if he starts following us again, we'll tell someone. As we're walking out, Jay is standing against the wall, turns and leaves as soon as I make eye contact. We make a sharp right into the small commons, where we tell the teachers. Guess what? It turns out we told the sexist asshole teacher at my school, and he didn't do anything about it. I'm unsure of what to do when I run into Stacy and Isabel. Isabel is a senior and a fellow guard member. She's kind of like my mentor. I go up to her and ask her if she's there with anybody. When she tells me no, I ask her if I can stay with her and explain the whole situation. She consoles me and promises to stay by my side. Stacy disappears after hearing what happened. Isabel takes me back, and we start dancing again. But we notice Jay doing laps again, passing our circle over and over. Isabel tells me he is talking to another guy and pointing at me. Then Stacy comes up to me, saying that she told him to leave me alone, but he screamed at her to F off and threatened to hit her if she talked to him like that again. We tried to continue dancing. Then Sophie grabs my hand. I look over to see Jay walking up to me, his hands balled into fists. Isabel puts her arm out and starts to tell him to leave me alone, but he pushes her out of the way. I grabbed my friend and ran. I was looking behind me at him giving chase when I ran smack dab into the principal. In hysteria, I tell her he's stalking me, and he pushed my friend. This amazing principal chases him down, putting him in a holding room. She came back and took a statement from me. Stacy told me she saw him get escorted out. The rest of the night was a blast. I had way too much punch, and it was overall an awesome night. I sent Jay a text this morning, telling him very clearly that we were no longer friends, and then he made me feel unsafe and not to contact me ever again, or the principal would get involved again. Then I blocked him for good. I'll have to see him again tomorrow in class, but I plan on avoiding him as much as possible, and if he talks to me, ignoring him. So Jay, even though I'll probably see you tomorrow, let's not meet again. So now, today, I'm at school, and Jay hasn't tried to talk to me, but he kept passing our lunch table and followed me when I went to the bathroom by myself. I also found out he has done similar things to 2 other girls, who I'm going to try to talk to and get a little more information on how they handled it. My friends have been super supportive, and they're all walking me to and from my classes. I think things might be okay from here on out, but I'll update if anything major happens. 2 weeks go by, a lot, and nothing has happened at the same time. I haven't been sleeping great, and when I do, I have vivid nightmares. The 2 that are most frequent are I'm at school, and he storms into my classroom with a gun, and I'm hiding in the attic, and he's in my house, dragging something heavy on the ground and sharpening a knife, telling me to come out and dance with him. I have this feeling of dread every time I see Jay, but I have been trying to brush it off and not let it affect anything. I really just want to move on, but I have been having a lot of trouble. I noticed the popping up in stairwells and passing the lunch table for the first 2 or 3 days, and then it suddenly stopped. I figured he had given up, until I went to lunch with my drum major, who we'll call Dawn. She asked me about how things are going, and I told her about the frequent incidences where we were nearby, and then them suddenly ending. She proceeded to tell me that she and Isabel had told some other seniors that I had classes with or nearby the problems I was having. Apparently, I'm well liked by the seniors, enough for them to tell him they were watching him and would make his school year the last one here if he did anything else to me, which explains the sudden disappearances. The strangest part is that I don't know who these guardian angels are. I told Dawn to thank them for me, and I've been figuring out who is the spy in the room and just striking up a conversation with them. So don't mess with the seniors. I also told some of my teachers about what happened. I only told the ones that taught classes that I had with Jay, because I didn't want it spreading everywhere. One was sympathetic and promised to seat us away from each other and keep us out of groups together. And the other went above and beyond. I told her about it, and she hugged me, promising me she would help me fix it, and that she would talk to him. I came into class the next day, and before I went in, she told me that she told him to stay away from me, and asked if I could stay after school to tell her about the entire thing. I agreed. Actually, reading my post on here, since it has the most accurate details, I gave more of a background to it. She told me that she wanted to help me. She told me that she thought that there were some serious issues with some of his texting, and that it was emotional manipulation and abuse. She told me the flirting after I asked him not to was sexual harassment, and the incident at homecoming was stalking. She wants me to print off my text messages with him and begin a folder of evidence to give to the school so it's documented. She informed me that there was a school therapist she thought I should consider, and assured me that as long as I wasn't a danger to myself or others, my parents wouldn't have to know, which I wanted to keep a secret for now. She asked me if it was okay to make an appointment with the school counselor, so he could refer me to the therapist legally. I agreed, and she's going to pull me out of PE tomorrow to meet with him. The last thing she asked me was if I wanted to drop out of her class, and the other class that I have with him. I don't think I'm going to, because this prick has done enough, and he doesn't get to take anything else away from me, thank God.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night, and I'll see you next time.